911 emergency, what are you reporting?
Hello.
This is 911, do you have an emergency?
I just went away from home because I live in a family of 15, okay? Can you hear me? We have abusing parents. Did you hear that?
Okay, how did they abuse you?
Okay. They hit us, they throw us across the room. They pull our hair, they yank out our hair. I have my two little sisters right now are chained up.
Okay, how old are you?
I'm 17.
What's your name?
Louise Turpin.
David Turpin met his soon-to-be wife, Louise Robinette, at Princeton High School in Princeton, West Virginia. David was a big computer geek, formerly graduating with a computer science degree back in the early 1980s. Louise was much younger than David when they decided to marry. David was approaching his 24th birthday while Louise was only just 16 years old. Somehow, this is probably the least disturbing thing to happen over the course of the next 23 years. Nonetheless, they got married in 1985. The two were Pentecostal Christians, which is only relevant due to their belief, at least in the Turpin's case, of having lots, and I mean lots, of kids. Between 1988 and 2015, Louise gave birth 13 times, resulting in 10 daughters and 3 sons. For a while, the growing family lived in different locations all around Texas, moving when they needed to. In 2007, David and Louise bought a trailer car, or maybe even found one on the side of the street and straight up took it. I mean, I wouldn't put it past them. Anyways, they left the trailer on their property away from the main house. At the time, the family consisted of David and Louise and their 10 children. David and Louise decided to use the trailer on their property in some kind of way, so they put 8 of the 10 kids in the trailer. If you could use the smallest ounce of brain power, you would know that a trailer car is way too small for that amount of people, let alone kids to live in. You know, kids that need space to play in and have fun in. David and Louise decided they were only going to take 2 of the youngest children out into the home with them to take care of. Meanwhile, they barely took care of the other 8, only providing a small amount of food for all of them each week. They delivered enough to feed maybe a couple of the kids weekly, so the children had to fight to survive eating anything they could. Jordan Turpin, just 6 years old at the time, recalled having to eat, quote, ketchup or mustard or ice. No full meals, just condiments to satiate the hunger. The kids would scavenge for food regularly, hoping to survive. This would be the existence that 8 of the Turpin kids would endure for the next 3 years. Come the early 2010s, David and Louise wanted to move out in search of a new home for their ever-growing family. They needed a bigger home to accommodate the new children being born into the family, so they went to one of the most terrifying places in the world, California. The family packed up and all moved to a small city in Riverside County, California. The children were relieved to finally have a chance of living in a new space that wasn't the disgusting trailer their parents basically ignored them in. They were still enduring abuse on a regular basis with malnourishment, disgusting living conditions, and more horrible things. After the family left their previous home, it was reported that neighbors went to check on the now vacant house. When they entered the property, they were immediately hit with a foul stench. Imagine the smell of feces, garbage, and dead animals all mixed together, because that's exactly what the neighbors found. They also found ropes tied and bound to the bed. This obviously raised concern, though nothing would ultimately come of this discovery. Back in California, the Turpins began to settle into what would be their last home. David and Louise would continue to have a few more children while continuing the mistreatment and abuse of their own children. Their new neighbors were more open and observant compared to the last ones. They actually noticed something odd happening. For their age, the kids all seemed extremely shy, for lack of a better word. The Turpin kids never spoke or communicated to anyone unless asked a question or unless the other person said something to them first. This wasn't even all that raised suspicion. Instead of a normal walk, the children would skip. The neighbors also noticed that they looked very malnourished, being super thin and extremely pale. Although seeing these disturbing and unnerving signs of something possibly bad happening to the kids, the neighbors would reserve these oddities and, in the end, not call the police. Neighbors of the Turpin family weren't the only ones to notice something wrong. Louise's own sister wanted to see the kids and spend time with her nieces and nephews, though weirdly to her, Louise would refuse. During this time, the Turpins posted pictures of the whole family in ways that deceived viewers, consisting mostly of family members, that everything was going well. So, Louise's sisters and family believed they were all happy and having fun at their new home in California. Throughout the Turpin kids' lives, they had been homeschooled, if you could even call it that. In reality, it was them struggling on a day-to-day basis from neglect, abuse, and torture. Evidently, they also rarely left the house until they moved to California. Soon after they were all settled in, David and Louise took the children to Disneyland frequently. You're probably thinking, oh, that's nice and unexpected of them. Taking the kids to have some fun at Disneyland every once in a while isn't that bad. Except this wasn't exactly for the kids. It was David and Louise who really wanted to go to Disneyland, having seen and heard of the place in all types of media throughout their lives. They were excited to visit now that they lived relatively close to the park. So, that's what they did. They would bring all 13 of their children now to Disneyland, probably to keep an eye on them and not because they actually cared about the kids having fun. Over the next few years, David and Louise Turpin would begin to talk about moving to another place, this time out in Oklahoma. Side note, is Oklahoma even real? I mean, I've never heard anyone say they're from there or even visited that place. Anyways, in early 2018, one of the Turpin kids, Jordan, a 17-year-old girl at the time, overheard her parents talking about the plan to move again. She wasn't exactly happy about this, deciding to finally execute the plan her and her siblings had been discussing over the past couple years. As the years went on and the kids got older, they began to realize their parents, David and Louise, were not good people. Some of them started to think about a way to escape the house. This wasn't easy considering the lack of knowledge of the outside world and overall lack of social and communication skills they need to tell someone to help them. Somehow, they got their hands on a cell phone, keeping it deactivated and out of sight from their parents, waiting to use it when one of them was outside and safe from the potential harm that would come to them if David or Louise caught them. On January 18th of 2018, around 6 a.m. in the morning, it was finally time. Jordan and one of her younger sisters escaped through a window in their home, while David and Louise were presumably asleep. Not too long after they got outside, the younger sister got scared and decided to turn back. They were almost never outside without the supervision of their parents, so this was terrifying to both of them. Nonetheless, Jordan continued. She walked and ran far away from the house, holding the cell phone she had kept hidden all of this time. When she finally reached a distance she felt safe in, she turned on the phone and dialed 911. Jordan, with her limited vocabulary caused by being severely sheltered from the outside world, frantically explained the conditions her and her siblings suffered in to the police. They soon dispatched an officer to meet with her. Later that morning, after Jordan explained to the police everything her parents had been putting her and her siblings through, they immediately sent out officers to do a raid under the guise of a welfare check. They knocked on the Turpins' front door, cautiously waiting for an answer. David and Louise would open the door seemingly on edge. They pretended to act confused as to why the officers would even show up in the first place. The police, of course, didn't believe them nor care, so they entered the house. Officers found evidence of everything Jordan had told them of. Trash scattered everywhere, dead animals and feces all around the floor. It was vile. They also found some of Jordan's siblings chained to their own beds for various amounts of time. Some weeks, others just days. Jordan's younger sister, who turned back that night, stayed up and waited for the police to show up, hoping Jordan accomplished what they both had sought out to do. So when she heard the knocks, she was relieved. Her sister had done it. The Turpin kids were disturbingly frail, dirty, and malnourished, appearing much younger than they actually were. Police also found notebooks containing writings of stories and details of the abuse the kids had documented over the past years. The countless beatings, chained-up nights, neglect, and overall torture the Turpin children had endured throughout their entire lives had finally been revealed to the world. David and Louise were ultimately charged with a vast array of crimes. Counts of torture, false imprisonment, child abuse, and more. Originally, David and Louise pleaded not guilty, but soon changed their pleas to guilty. Both were given life sentences with the possibility of parole after 25 years, which is insane considering what they've done. Though just because there is a possibility of it happening doesn't mean it actually will. After they were sentenced, David was sent to California State Prison in Corcoran, and Louise was sent to Central California Women's Facility. Both will likely never see each other ever again. Once the Turpin children were finally freed, all of them received treatment for the nutritional deficiencies and cognitive problems they faced. While normal kids their age grew up with a relatively healthy lifestyle, these kids were barely eating any food, drinking water, or any beverage for that matter. And they lived in disgusting conditions, all contributing to the health issues they had to get treatment for. In late 2019, 6 of the 13 Turpin children who are still under 18 were soon sent into 2 different foster homes. Unfortunately, 5 of the kids were adopted by another abusive family, the Olgins. It's alleged that they were hit in various different ways, forced to eat an ungodly amount of food in a short time period, and when they threw up, as a reaction to this, the family would force the kids to eat their own vomit. I won't go into too much detail, but the foster father, Marcelino, was also alleged to have done other disgusting things to the children. They were soon arrested when people discovered what had happened. This isn't all though, as starting in 2020, some of the kids had been mistreated by the Riverside County legal system even more. Some of the Turpin kids were homeless, and the donations given to help the kids aren't even being given to them at all. It's been a complete disaster. Recently, in the last couple years, the Turpin kids have begun to sue the county and foster care agencies that have mistreated them since they've been freed. They even alleged that the Olgins, the abusive foster family, had a history of doing things similar to other foster kids they've taken in the past, something the foster agency should have known. The Turpin kids that sued them also reasoned that the agency had a financial motive to give them over, something they prioritized over the safety of abused children. To my knowledge, that whole lawsuit is still ongoing, but hopefully justice can come to the Turpin children who have already gone through so much. In the end, the Turpin siblings are safe and free from the abuse and torture they had been subjected to throughout almost all of their lives. Jordan Turpin, the one who initially called the police leading to their freedom, is active online primarily on TikTok. All of the kids are still close and talk to each other frequently. After everything that's happened, they all just want to move on and grow into independent people, hoping to go to school, pursue careers, and live healthy lives they once thought was never possible under the eye of their parents.